He's got a complete bio, which we'll share with y'all. But he has a pretty impressive resume. He actually started out in the engineering field. Decided, you know what, I'm passionate about that, but he had other passions as well. So he got into financial planning and advising. I'm looking here, you went and got your AAMS certification through the College of Financial Planning. Dan has 4 boys. He's married, has 4 boys, and they love getting outdoors. You know, anytime you have that many kids, as we both do, it's just get them outdoor and let them go. So that's a good thing. He has a very great executive or administrative staff team, and Tammy Neely is critical in that. She's been helpful in the things that we've done together. I have a lot of confidence in Dan, and that's one of the reasons I brought you on, Dan, is obviously I bring on people I trust and would love to introduce to other people, and also share knowledge and tips that can help us all succeed. So I'm happy to have you here today, Dan. Thank you for being on.
Sure thing. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right into it. We're gonna do our typical disclaimer. There we go. So Dan is obviously a financial advisor, but the things that we talk about today are not him giving you direct advice on anything that you should do. It's all fact specific. So if you have questions for Dan, reach out. Similarly, if there's anything legal or any intersect that happens with legal and financial advising today, I'm not offering that advice in my official capacity. If there's specific facts that you'd like to go over with myself, then I'd love to have you reach out and we can do that. A little brief spiel on a legal issue. It's caught a lot of people by surprise, and that's why I brought it up a couple times. We sent out a weekly email last week about this. We wrote a recent blog post, but many people, when they set up their businesses in Arizona, they know, hey, I've got to file. If I'm going to do it, I've got to contact the Corporation Commission in Arizona and the IRS, right? Those are kind of the big ones. In Arizona, you also have some of these other ones like the Department of Economic Security. They require you to get a unemployment number, and you also need to get if you're selling, doing certain things, you have to get what's called a transactional privilege tax number. But on top of all that, those are things that a lot of people know about. We help people with that all the time. Cities have their own licensing requirements. And a lot of people, when they start their business, don't realize it. A lot of people start their business and put their home address, which is their primary place of business. Well, guess what? You now qualify in that city to be a business doing business in that city from that location. And so you have to apply for and get this business license in many instances. And so, for example, in Mesa, just recently this year, actually, they started this requirement to get a business license if you operate a business and you have a place of business in Mesa. The way that they've stated it, it's helpful, is during the pandemic, they weren't able to contact business owners because they didn't have the information they needed to tell them, hey, these are things that we're providing to businesses through this pandemic. Here's some updates. So yes, it can have an informational benefit to businesses, I don't doubt. And on the back end, of course, there's an annual renewal fee. So some part of this has got to be a money piece, no doubt about it. Mesa, Gilbert, Queen Creek, Scottsdale, Chandler, Paradise Valley, they all require, I put Queen Creek twice. It must really be important. No, it's just, they all require an annual business license renewal. So that's something you should look at. I looked specifically just at Maricopa County. Some of the other cities like Phoenix does require a business license for specific types of businesses. The ones I've listed here are just the ones that require it for any business, whether you're, whatever it is. There's a renewal fee, and then if you don't do it, and then also post it in your place of business, you can have a fine, and there can be a misdemeanor attached to it, which is never fun to be threatened with a misdemeanor, criminal misdemeanor. So if you need help with that, let us know. We'd love to help. Really, it's just a compliance piece. So I know each of you, if you wanted to do it yourself, I know you can. But a lot of people, like we'll talk about today with Dan, you've got other things to worry about. So that's where, as a law firm, we come in on that relationship level and just help make your, working through the process really easy. So Dan's going to talk to us about 5 tips on how to protect and manage your money for small businesses and business owners. Dan, I'm going to turn this over to you now to just walk us through these tips, and then I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Perfect. Sounds good, Tim. Well, I appreciate you taking the opportunity and the time with it. Yeah, so we came up with 5 different individual ideas that are going to help make us stronger business owners on the financial side. So just kind of starting from the top right or the top left there and working our way down, working with the right professionals. That's so critical. I think any of us that are business owners know that if you've got the right accountant, the right attorney, or the right financial advisor, that's going to be important to make sure we're not missing opportunities. The other one, and I'll touch on this a bit today, retirement account options for businesses. All right, so I've kind of got a list starting from our smallest to our greatest and what those might look like, and hopefully we'll untangle a little bit of the web of what that may look like.
Yeah.
Next thing, proper business emergency funds. I think a lot of us remember or have heard that we need to have personal emergency funds, which is our number 4 on that list. But I'll break down a little bit of the business emergency funds. Right? What happens and how much should that look like also. And the last one, option to protect and grow money inside investment accounts. We'll go ahead and talk about how those hard-earned dollars that you already are making and putting away can hopefully be put to work for you. So have almost a little second company on the side. So go into those.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right into it. Again, I know a lot of businesses and business owners face these same dilemmas. They're running their business. They don't have the time or maybe the industry knowledge to say, hey, what is it that how should I even start? So that's one thing I appreciate, Dan, that you do well is you break it down very simple. You help people. This can be a very complicated field. There's a lot of different options people can pursue, and it can be overwhelming. And really, I'm a big proponent in the first step to anything is just starting. And having that start point be a very simple step is something that I appreciate you do. So that step in the first direction is that right professional. So I'm going to go to that slide here. So walk us through, what is it that, if somebody's looking for, hey, I don't have, or maybe I have a financial advisor, I just don't know if they're the right fit for me. How do you walk through that process with people?
Yeah, good point and a great question on this one here. The right professional for protecting and managing your money is going to be someone first off that you trust. So this could be a family member, it could be a longtime friend here with it, but making sure that their ideals match what you're looking for. From time to time, there might be someone who comes across my desk, for example, that says, I'm a real big believer in these types of investments. And if that doesn't match really well with what I go ahead and do, it's not going to be that win-win scenario for me or them. So making sure that what your advisor or those professionals are looking at, make sure those ideals line and that they're the experts in those specific things. So, and then kind of moving on this number 2 here, what are some of the red flags I should be looking out for?
Yeah.
This can range, right? Sometimes we think to ourselves, if someone is newer, that's not going to be an ideal person, or maybe if they're too far out. Again, I'm going to come back to that trust factor. When you sit down with them, tell them what's important to you. Are you hearing that echoed back, right? If that's not, and they're telling you how it's going to go ahead and be, I would say that's a red flag in my book. Make sure that you're going to have open communication, especially in my world or in yours, where details matter so much. I want to make sure that if people are going to be doing something with me, that they feel very comfortable about it through those ups and the downs, because it always doesn't come out as a perfect picture every step of the way. Some other things to look for: make sure that they offer products that you're interested in, right? That they go through those. All of us have got a certain box that we work inside of, but make sure that they're offering things that are insurance-based and that aren't. Make sure that you've got options from there, and that even someone like me isn't going to be completely biased. Or again, if it doesn't seem like it matches what Dan does with what you feel most comfortable with, make sure that that's a red flag for you. You're looking at the next. So,
Dan, something that I appreciate about you too is one red flag maybe I'll bring up is people that don't do what they preach. Hey, I've got these great opportunities for you to invest your money. And I don't mean every financial advisor has to be a millionaire that can do the same thing that their clients can do. But people that are willing to put their own money into the same investment pools that you are, that they're telling their clients they should. I think that's a big indicator to me, especially in this trusted, very heavily trusted type of relationship. There's only a few that are like this. Financial planning, accounting can be the same, because literally these people know. I mean, it's the most intimate details. Law can be like that, even some ways lesser than where you're at, just because law often deals with one aspect of a person's life and not everything. So yeah, what you do, and that what I appreciate that I've seen you do with many people, is you actually practice what you preach. You outline these steps and you actually do it yourself.
I appreciate you saying that. No, and I guess I'm that same type of person, that I'm a worrier by nature. A lot of people probably think I'm a total optimist and always looking for that opportunity with it. But we got to make sure we check all the boxes. So that's kind of a big one there on that side. So appreciate you saying it. Now, if you're in a situation, kind of this third point with it, where you're asking yourself, is everything that Dan just described, is that the person I'm working with or that I don't have right now? Some people would think it's a very difficult process to go ahead and start. Now, there's steps involved with it. And I will say that on your own, it's a little more difficult. But as you pointed out, we've got a team here. There's 3 of us. There's myself as a financial advisor. Tammy has been with me almost a decade now. And we got so busy, we brought on Peggy as well. And they help a lot in making sure that we get those financial statements, so we know what investments we're looking at, that things can transfer as efficiently as possible with the least amount of fees, and moving over. But I think a lot of people are surprised to find that if done right and we stay on top of it, it can be a pretty straightforward process. So
That's awesome.
Not impossible to change.
That's awesome. Well, hey, I know we have this scenario, but I think we've hit most of it. I'm going to jump right into this next step, because I think this is where we start to get to what piques people's interest, which is, okay, how do I start saving and or making money for myself? So retirement account options for businesses. First of all, tell me why why I should even consider it as a small business owner.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest, first off, that it's hard to put money away. There's a lot of cool things in the world to buy, right? And there's a lot of business considerations that we want to go ahead and look at. But I would say there's 2 advantages to putting into retirement accounts that people want to consider. One is that we're going to put that money to work for you, right? This is something that those dollars that you've worked hard to go ahead and have can go into investments you feel comfortable with, and hopefully will grow over the long run. So that's kind of the first advantage with it. The second advantage, specifically for business owners, is the idea that you're really showing your employees that they matter when you go ahead and set up a plan. Case in point with that is that with a 401k, which is probably the most typical one that we hear about, there's usually a match portion, which means that if I, the employee, am putting in, my employer is going to go ahead and send money into my investment account in addition to that. And that's money that we're leaving on the table if we don't go ahead and do it as employees. But as those business owners, it's also a great way, again, to show them, here's this other benefit that hopefully is going to show that appreciation and keep employees engaged and saying, maybe I'm not interested in switching. They take care of me here.
Yeah. And on top of that, as we'll talk about a little bit later, the tax reduction aspect to these things, the shifting of the potential income points of, hey, if I do provide this benefit, not only does it benefit the employee, but it also benefits me by reducing the potential net income I have to present as far as for what the IRS is going to start dinging me for. So I love that. Let's jump into those. What are some of these retirement plans that are available, and why might some fit better than others for small businesses?
Perfect. Yeah, so I put together a list, and Tim's team went ahead and put all of this presentation together. But starting at the top is IRA. Now, a lot of us have probably heard of what that is, but it stands for an individual retirement account. All right, the second one down is the first business plan, all right, called the Simple IRA, which means that my employees can also participate in something like an IRA. And just as a reference point, I won't go into all the detail of each of these with it, But this is something that my team and I go through with each person on a customized basis to make sure we're going to the right plan. But continuing on, there's a Simple Ira, an owner K, which is really set up for maybe somebody who's got themselves only as a business and or just a spouse. And then we get to the very popular 401k that most of us have heard about. That in addition, though, there's things like profit sharing or defined benefit plans. A lot of us forget that you can really sock a lot of money away into it. So you brought up the idea of tax advantage. If I'm a business owner that's really doing well, then these can be some potentially huge ones. You can put sometimes 250, 300,000 roughly into these plans if you do a combination of them.
Wow.
So it can be pretty substantial in the long run. One, for that business owner to save money on taxes, put away from their own retirement. Or again, a way to show your employees that I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I want to keep you as an employee.
Yeah, one thing that you'd also told me as we got prepared for this today, Dan, and really I liked it. A lot of us as business owners, we have a type A personality. That's why you're a business owner a lot of times. And so one of the things you talked about is, instead of putting your money in the bank where the bank then goes and invests it on whatever it wants to, sending out loans or whatever else, you put your money into a retirement plan. Not only does it reduce your net income, which you have to, and this is all accounting. So again, tax advice, you go talk to your accountant on these, but not only can it reduce your net income to then have to report as income to the IRS, but it also is a way that you can control your investments. There's a lot of different vehicles. So instead of your money just sitting in a bank account, one, not earning interest, but two, being used by somebody else, you are essentially the bank. You're making choices with your money to invest it. And so those are really cool things that can be done. A lot of people don't think about that with these retirement tools. They just think, hey, that's great. I get to set it away. It's pre-tax dollar. Awesome for me. No, the whole other aspect to this is you get to direct these funds towards something you're actually either one, passionate about or convinced that will be a better fit for you long term.
Love that. Really good point and explanation with that. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to jump to this next one because I think this builds. This is where some of the light bulbs happened for me. Well, let's talk about Carla real quick before we jump into into this next. But Carla has a growing business with growing profits. She's looking at getting hit with high taxes due to her net income. She also wants to prepare for her retirement, but doesn't really know what to do. So in an instance like this, Dan, a client, comes to you, what should Carla do?
Yeah, they usually, hopefully this is a situation that a lot of us run into, right?
This would be great.
This is the ideal situation, right? She's growing those profits, means she's doing something people like, right? But now she's getting whacked with these higher taxes. So whether Carla is making $100,000 or $1 million, she has these plans available to her. So sitting down with someone like myself, we'd go ahead and look at that and say, okay, let's talk through what your options look like. And as you had pointed out, if she goes ahead and puts money into those, it can really reduce that net income and effectively saving her in taxes. A lot of us forget that the highest tax bracket is 37% just for federal. And that doesn't include state and FICA Medicare. So it's very possible that someone gets way up there doing well finally, and they're giving more than half away to the government. These plans, you can put it away and you get that money back and are investing it, like you said, in your future for yourself and have control of that. Personally, a path that I prefer doing versus giving it to the government.
Well, the other thing too, I love that thought. One of the things that I run into with a lot of business owners is you're running your business, and that's really your passion. That's your for lack of a better term, it's one of your children, right? It's one of the things that you invest a lot of time and energy into. And a lot of business owners, what they do with their money is they actually just reinvest it all back into the business. What ends up happening sometimes, and I've read a lot of different books about this, there's people that focus specifically on this sometimes, which is you reinvest it, and then something goes awry. The economy turns against your business, like a restaurant, in COVID, or you have a lawsuit that pops up that really just is not good for your business. And with all that money you made, you end up having nothing to show for it. But in this instance, what you're doing is you're actually prioritizing yourself. You're putting yourself in a position that's going to make you successful, but also still allowing the business to grow and do what it needs to. That's one thing that I really appreciate too is a lot of business owners, we lose track of sometimes the focus or goal, which is, hey, we're doing this because we're passionate, but we're also doing this to set up a life that we had a passion for. And oftentimes that includes family, that includes other things in life that are important to us. And so taking care of all those factors is critical. And that's a cool thing to do as well.
That's a really good point. Unfortunately, I would say I've had a few instances of this where either it happened that someone's business for years has been doing fantastic. They got a good income, although they were in their working years with it. And the whole plan was, this is my exit strategy.
Yeah.
I'm going to package this thing up at the end of it, and this is what retirement looks like for me. But then all of a sudden, their kid maybe wasn't so interested in taking it over.
Yeah.
Or maybe they don't have the same passion that mom or dad have got for running that business. The business goes ahead and goes through a tough time with it. Whatever it is, that proverbial all of our eggs in one basket scenario goes ahead and happens. So I've seen people who have done very, very well for themselves, and it just turns around because all of a sudden that egg spoiled.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing for a lot of them. So this is a way that you can diversify beyond that and say, hey, yeah, I've got another horse in the race essentially here with it.
Yeah.
There's also, and I can't go into probably too much with it, but there's certain protections with our retirement accounts as well. That if even you went through bankruptcy, that there's money that is protected inside of there that necessarily can't be taken away. That's not available for every type of account or business. So
Yeah.
those are big considerations.
No, I love that. Well, this goes into that next question of, well, how do I know what's enough? Because as a business owner, you're always constantly not sure of how much does it, do you need to have for your business on those rainy day funds? So let's talk about that. That's something that you talk with people about. What's a proper business emergency fund?
Yeah, one, it's a tremendous idea, and it's a necessary idea. A lot of us, again, and I mentioned this earlier in the beginning, have heard of a personal emergency fund to protect our families. But what about our employees and our livelihood? So for example, how much should I have? I would say that this is a couple of considerations. One, based on how up and down your business is. How volatile is it, right? Are you in a business like mine that my paycheck comes down when my client accounts come down? Well, if that's the case, you want to make sure you maybe have a little bit more. If you're going ahead and running the type of thing that is just absolutely steady Eddie with it, never really wavers, you probably could have a little bit less. To quantify that, I'd say at least every business should have 3 months of operating expenses. And I'll clarify a bit more what I mean for that. But on a volatile business, you might want to have as much as 6 months inside of there.
Yeah.
All right. And then in addition, if you got some big purchases coming down the pipe there, you want to make sure you're preparing for those so it doesn't catch you off guard in that regard. Keep in mind, we had an example really recent here. I take care of several dentist practice. And one of the things was when COVID hit, you guys may recall, but masks and gloves were deemed to only go to essential businesses. Believe it or not, they weren't considered essential enough to be operating. Wow. So I had dental practices that you would think would be the easiest thing as far as the most steady thing that wasn't going anywhere, and they were shut down. Wow. That was scary for a lot of dentists that thought everyone's getting cavities tomorrow, so I'm going to have business tomorrow. And I think they were right to think that. But this is an example of why you should have at least 3 to 6 months. Now, to clarify that one more point, then you could talk personally with me about it for your situation, is I see a lot of people asking the question, well, Dan, maybe I've got 50,000 a month in expenses, or 100,000, $1 million in expenses. Well, keep in mind, like that dental practice, all right, you need to probably have enough to cover your people. But if you're not selling the products and need to buy those products, okay, to do the fillings or have this or that on, keep the lights on. Well, if the lights are off, that's less of an expense. If you have gone ahead and not had your people really working, Take overtime out of your consideration for your regular operating expenses. Make sure though that you can keep the team that you're going to need whenever things do turn around, because that's what we're all hoping for. This is a way to prepare for it.
I love that. We had a commercial banker on the other month, and we talked about some of the ways to build in. These are emergency funds that we're talking about right now that are really cash based, that we can use and move into investment accounts that can earn money, that are there for us to use. There's also options there to maybe use as well for like a commercial card or a line of credit, other things that might be available to help as well with that. So let's go into this next scenario here just to kind of get a better feel for what you're talking about. So Jeremiah and Rosa are business partners. They collectively run a company that has 10 employees. The two business partners currently split and distribute all the profits that the company makes on a monthly basis. This leaves them with little to no reserves if they have a month where they do not make enough money. What should they do to set up an emergency fund?
Yeah, this is a great scenario, one that happens from time to time. In fact, I'd say pretty often. You've got those partners, and maybe you don't exactly see eye to eye on it every single point, right? Doesn't mean you're still not great business partners, but they're distributing out those profits. I think this is a good opportunity to bring both business partners together and say, hey, based on what Dan's talking about, what do we feel comfortable with? And I'd say it's the same thing with our spouse, right? Or significant other. Yeah. Coming together and saying, hey, we're more of a 3-month type of family situation, or more of a 6-month, which I'll get into the personal side. But as a business, come together with your business partner and make sure this is a priority. Yeah. There are options, as you pointed out, like lines of credits and credit cards. The variable that we don't know though is how long are things going to drag on? Yeah. And I still got a payment on those when it's all said and done. So I look at credit cards and lines of credits personally, as that is the account that I use for opportunity for growth. Yeah. For the idea though of things going backwards in a business, that emergency situation, that's where cash is king in that regard. It's still going to allow me to pay for that growth that maybe I was thinking was going to happen, i.e. those payments on that line of credit or that credit card. But we got to have cash, to some extent with that. Yeah. So this is a perfect example. Come together as a partnership and determine how much cash are we going to be hanging on to.
I like that. Thank you. So we've heard, as you said, a lot of us have heard this. This is a concept that's preached by many. So this personal emergency fund might be more commonly known. But tell me what that means, what it looks like to you as far as when you're talking to clients.
Yeah. So personal emergency fund. How can I be sure I have enough in those emergency funds? Every situation again is slightly different. That's why someone like me has a job. But again, kind of tying it back almost like we did with the business. Are you more of a 3-month or are you more of a 6-month type of person? I'll even give you my own scenario with it. All right, for me and my wife, we're the types that we know if there's too much money sitting in our checking savings account, well, that trip to Disneyland or somewhere else is pretty appealing. So we actually break up our emergency fund in a couple of spots, but I'm in a business that goes up and down. And I actually brag about that, in that if my clients' accounts are coming down, my paycheck comes down. Well, my wife might not love that every month, right? It's not a good feeling with it, but that's the type of business I'm in. So I make sure that I've got that 6-month emergency fund for a business like mine. Another scenario where it might even be more than that is if, let's say that I know I might have some health concerns coming up, or I'm in retirement and I'm concerned about my investments going up and down. Well, this is where you might want to make sure you've got a bit more, up to say a year's worth, all right? That maybe some of that is just invested more conservatively. And there's high yield savings accounts, CDs, things of that nature. Okay, we go into products at another time. Yeah. But the whole idea is that I want to make sure that if something like that happens, a down market, that is a recent retiree, I'm not having to sell my investments at losses. I can wait and let those confidently come back around. So as history has told us, that is very likely going to be the scenario. But when I need income, I still need income. And unfortunately, even though a credit card is a good backstop, if we need it, carries a pretty high interest rate, and those payments still got to be made.
Yeah, I like how you've addressed those. The credit card and the line of credit, they are tools that can be used, but they aren't the backdrop. They're not for these instances, emergency fund types of things. They're not what we should consider or should have solely as our emergency tools. So let's jump into this scenario here. Eliza has a growing company. Each month, she continues to reinvest the profits of her business into the business. We've talked about that. And again, this happens. I mean, I talk to business owners all the time. This is common. Uh, Without taking out much, if anything, for herself personally. She's been doing this for 2 years and doesn't know what to do differently. So let's talk about that. What is the first step you recommend if somebody comes to you with this? We'll call it with this problem, but really with this set of facts.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to say it. This is a great situation that she's in. She's in a growing company. She's doing well. In fact, this is one of the things that I tout that's, I think, different about our team is we really like to focus on working with the other professionals that my clients have. This is an ideal situation to bring on the accountant and say, okay, one, can we afford to start taking money out of the accounts, okay, for the business, start paying her different, or start sliding that money into something that's in her name, but that may be available for the business later. Again, it reminds me and kind of echoes of that story of my business owners, very successful. They'd even come to me and say, well, Dan, why would I want to invest in this passive investment, get, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 12%, you know, whatever it is, but I know I can sell my widget and make 30% profit. That doesn't add up.
Yeah.
Well, I probably go ahead and contend it's a little bit like my emergency fund in that I know I'm not going to make much on my emergency fund, but that's not the purpose. The purpose for her right now is to make sure that she can put into a different basket and make sure that she's doing that as efficiently as possible. Without going too deep, a lot of people forget that if they're an LLC, all right, it's a pass-through entity. I can almost see the eyes glazing over when I say something like that, but it means that you're still paying the taxes as a business. So it's either hanging out in the business account, taxes already paid for, or I start sliding that over into my personal name. And now I've got that over here. So either one, the taxes are happening. It's a matter now of registration. And I'd rather make sure that if I'm in a growing company, that I can say this money is actually mine.
No, that makes sense. Awesome. These scenarios help us just kind of get a feel because again, I base these scenarios off of my conversations that I've had with many people. So I appreciate your input there. All right.
Yeah.
So options to protect and grow money inside investment accounts. We've talked about these emergency funds. I think you're going to maybe provide a little bit of direction on that, but also outside of just emergency funds. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And then that joke comment that you've heard, I know you've heard as a financial advisor. I've heard it before. Somebody told me that the other day. Well, I know how you could save 1% on your money. So I wanted to give you the chance to address that. There's a lot of lawyer jokes, so I wanted to tee that up.
Yeah. No, I could take the hit there with it. Yeah. No, it's a fair consideration there. And one I'd ask myself, right? Whether you're thinking about having an accountant, an attorney, a financial advisor, a contractor, right? We're paying all kinds of costs to these different people. I'm no different than anyone else. I want to make sure that if I'm putting money into something, that I'm getting the value out of it I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of address that one real quick. Hopefully you're feeling that value. Now, from my big thing is make sure that when we're looking at that 1% or whatever the cost is your advisor is talking about with it, make sure there's more than just going ahead and managing the money, the set it and forget it mentality. It should be that they're staying active with you, making sure that they know what your risk tolerance looks like. When there's bad times in the market, okay, I think this should be somebody who's coming to you and saying, how is this affecting you? Yeah. It shocks, I think, a lot of us, the younger professionals, when I tell them that a down market like we're experiencing in the stock market right now is the best thing that can happen to us. I think it takes the breath out of all us when we think that. And it's because we're putting money in while it's cheaper. Yeah. And even if I've got money that's in and it's coming down, now all my investments are buying everything that I already like at cheaper prices. So the best thing for us are down markets while we're working. Just a little different mentality, but maybe that's the mentality that's going to keep me invested for the long run with doing things. So when I come into that middle one, can the right financial advisor actually help me make safer investments? I do believe so. I think there's some out there that probably are convincing folks to put it into something riskier. Again, that comes down to that trust and that piece of making sure that they're finding the right things. I have met people over my time that only feel comfortable being in cash or CDs. In my opinion, that word safe is very subjective. To me, when I hear that inflation is as rampant as it is, and I hear that the government is not stopping the printing press anytime soon, I think those investments I just mentioned may be the least safe. My principle is intact, but my buying power is getting really beaten up as things get more and more expensive in life. So personally, I think that that's a consideration we all should be looking at.
No, I agree. And one of the things that I've recently come across, one nice thing for what you are as a financial advisor, you have regulations and rules. Some people don't like the rules that follow financial advisors. You have to report to federal agencies. You have to comply with certain things. And in some ways, yeah, that can be frustrating because this really shiny investment that my friend told me about, I can't do through a financial advisor. I just had an instance where I have a couple people that have reached out to me about an investment that they just were in, that it ends up the gentleman who was running the whole investment scheme, it was a Ponzi scheme. And this is not me trying to push anybody towards not exploring your own investments, but as a financial advisor, again, that's another step that allows you to, well, it requires you to take that extra step of diligence to be safe on things. And even with financial advisors, you have to find that right fit. Let me walk through the scenario with you so we can think through what type of investment tools might be right for people. Yeah. Frederico has over 250,000 in excess funds from his business. Instead of it sitting in his bank account earning no interest, I shouldn't say no interest. I think it's like what 0.02,
0.01, yeah, today.
He'd like to invest it, so he needs to have access to around 100,000 of it on short notice, and wants the other 150,000 to put into a longer term investment. He can't afford to lose it ultimately, or so he thinks, or so they think. Now, what would he do? What should he do in this case?
Yeah, this happens more than folks would go ahead and think. Is that they've again come to the situation, business is good, but the bank account's not paying anything, and they're saying, man, I need access to some of my money. In his case, $100,000 in short notice. This is maybe where we can break things up. Where we say, okay, maybe we need to have 50 or 100,000 that is very readily accessible. And I mean, same day, next day, it's something there. There's other investment accounts that we go ahead and offer that my clients can have their money, all right, if they need it, in about a 4-day notice, business day on that side. So they can easily go ahead and put into a less aggressive investment that maybe is going to yield them a better return than what the bank is going to do. So they're never really at risk of losing it all type situation. It's going to move up and down some. But at the end of the day, what's going to happen is that they're going to hopefully keep up a bit more with that inflation and still have the access to funds that they need without having penalties. I think a lot of folks are surprised to know that they can put it in with me. They're only going to get charged for the day, the week, the month that money is inside of there. Now, we all hope that all that money can be invested in growing in the long run or keep growing that business. But we want tools that we can go ahead and put it into to make sure if we need it, we can get to it pretty quick.
No, that's awesome. And that's another thing as far as breaking down, one of the things that you or a good financial advisor will do is a lot of us on the individual side, if we're looking to invest money, we have some, hey, we'll throw it into this mutual fund or whatever that we've created for ourselves. And we don't think of how we can separate it out on a chunk basis. Hey, maybe this 100,000 is in a very less aggressive fund, and maybe this other portion of it is in a more aggressive long-term fund. And so having somebody really analyzing that with you, thinking through that situation is very helpful. So, okay, that's our last scenario, Dan. That went quick.
Did.
Hey, if you have additional questions, you can reach out to me or Dan. This last slide will show you, contact information for my team and for Dan. Dan, we really do appreciate it. This is super helpful to just get a little more in-depth, perspective on this piece. It goes one step further than a lot of times we go with our clients, which is, hey, how's your business doing? And how are you as a business owner doing? This really goes to that personal level of, hey, are you reaching that goal that you wanted to when you started your business of being financially independent, of trying to afford yourself a little more time to be with the family or whatever it was? And that's a really cool goal to reach if you have the plan in place to do it. But if you don't, you probably, well, I know you won't ever get there.
Yeah, no, you're great. And I appreciate that. Yeah, I think probably exactly with what your profession is, mine's no different. I work with really intelligent people who are very good at what they do. And at the end of the day, each one of us has our own specialties. I remember taking my kids to their first day of school, and they were a little bit down about it. And I pointed out to a Circle K and said, I consider myself a decently smart guy, but if I walked into Circle K and put on their shirt, I wouldn't have the first idea what to do. Right? So when you're talking to someone like Tim or myself, just know that you can come confidently, and we'll show you the ropes. We'll show you around the convenience store, around the legal side, or the finances, and you can take it easy with it. This is what we do, and again, we help smart people just be a little bit better off. So hope that helps.
Hey, I appreciate you, Dan. Thank you so much.